Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. As mentioned, my name is Felix Villalobos. I am an immigration attorney, and we're happy to be here to share some great information with you. We do have about 16, 17 slides, so I'm going to do my best to share as much information as I can. All right, so for my portion of the presentation, first we're going to talk about your rights, the rights that you have at your home, at work, while you're driving. And then we're going to talk a little bit about immigration legal options in general, including a little bit on what public notaries or notarios are. Next slide, please. Okay, so first things first, constitutional rights. Many times people believe that if they are not a US citizen or a legal permanent resident, that they do not have constitutional rights, and that is incorrect. Regardless of your legal status, you do have constitutional rights. For example, everybody in the United States has the right to remain silent, meaning that you have the right to not speak to a person. You have the right, and by person I usually mean police officers or immigration officers. And you also have a right to see a warrant in any time in which a person says they have an arrest warrant for you. You have the right to ask to see that warrant. And third, you have the right to an attorney. This may depend on your situation, that you may have to wait till you're taken into a processing center or to a jail or to a center to be able to speak to an attorney, but you do have a right to an attorney in both criminal and immigration situations. And so one thing that is not a right is to require the police and immigration to be honest. In constitutional law, it has been held that the police and immigration can lie to you or can try and trick you into admitting information or showing them documentation. So just be aware that that is not a right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your rights in certain situations. We're going to talk about, at home first, and then at work, and then while driving. Okay, so when the police come to your home, I am going to draw the distinction between police and immigration officers. Okay, so you may have, this has been in the news a bit. When a police shows up to your door, if they have a warrant, a proper warrant, and what's called a reasonable belief that the person that lives is there, you may need to let them in. And this in the context of whether if you hear somebody knocking at your door and they yell police, and you're wondering, do I have to open this door or not? Well, if they do have a warrant, and the person is there, you may need to let them in. If the police does not have a warrant, and the police does not have a reason to be there, it just feels like they are randomly there, you may not have to let them in. Many times it may come down to the situation. If somebody's called 911 or there's an emergency, then it may be a situation where you're wanting the police there. But if you didn't call 911 and somebody randomly knocks on your door and say that they are the police, unless you called them, and if they can't show your warrant, you may not have to let them in. Now, many times there is a situation where they don't have a warrant, but there may be exigent circumstances, and exigent means urgent. You may need to let them in, because in those situations, police may be able to get in there because there's an urgent situation. And as you can tell from these three that, it's not clear cut, right? There may be certain situations where you may have to think, well, do they have a warrant? How would you know? You may need to ask for that. And I'll describe a little bit about that in the next slide. But as far as police, they are different from immigration in regards to when they come to your door. So now when immigration comes to your door, they have to have a warrant. That warrant has to be signed properly by a judge, and it has to have the correct name of the person that they are there to go pick up or detain. They can't just knock down your door because you won't let them in. That may be the kind of thing that maybe happens when it's police and there are exigent circumstances, meaning something urgent. But in general, ICE or immigration must have a warrant signed by a judge, and then have to be looking for the right person, a person that actually lives there. If they don't have that, you are not required to open the door. You can ask for them to pass the warrant under the door, or if that doesn't work, you can have them put it up on the window so you can look at it. At no time do you want to open the door, because when you open the door, it is said that you are inviting them in. Therefore, then they can walk in. You can't just try and close the door on them after the fact. So best thing to do is ask to look at the warrant. Now, if the warrant is for a person, the name of a person that does not live there, you don't have to talk to immigration. You don't have to continue a conversation. You don't have to let them in. You can simply stop talking to them. If you want, you can tell them that that person doesn't live there and that you're not going to open the door, but you don't even have to do that. Now, if the person does live there and they are there, then you have to let them in. Otherwise, you can get into big trouble. What I usually suggest there is that if immigration is there with a properly signed warrant by a judge, and it's the name of the person that lives there and that person is there, warn everybody in the household first that ICE is there and that you're going to have to let them in. That way everybody can be ready to exercise their rights to remain silent and to request an attorney. Now, what happens if immigration comes to your work? We have seen that in DFW in the past few years, where ICE has raided some companies in the area. And unfortunately, those that suffer the most are the people that are detained and their families, because sometimes they can take time to locate them and find out what happened to them. Usually when ICE raids a company, they are actually targeting the company itself. Somebody has usually called the ICE to report that they are hiring people that may not have legal status, or it could be that the company's not paying the workers. But in the end, usually there's a tip. And then ICE raids the company, and they will raid them for documents, but at the same time, they will also question workers. For companies that are not following the rules of Department of Homeland Security, there are pretty big fines to those companies. We're talking about in the thousands for each infraction. Many times ICE will do what's called an ICE audit, where they will come in and look at documents. And many times an ICE audit will occur before ICE does a raid on the company. Now, if there is an ICE raid at your work, if you have legal status, whether it's because you're a US citizen, a permanent resident, or a DACA or any other status, or even if you have a work permit, if you can choose to tell them your name and show them your work permit or your ID, and typically that they may not detain you or take you into a processing center. If you do not have legal status, this is where you want to exercise your right to remain silent, because anything you say will be used against you. Again, immigration and police, whenever it comes to looking for information, if you didn't call them for assistance, then they're using that information to gather, and they may use it any way they want to. So you want to be careful about that. But in the end, if you are detained, you want to call an attorney if you're detained by ICE. Many times I will state that you should call your family to let them know where you are and where they are taking you, and then have your family call an attorney so that they can get involved. Now, what happens if immigration stops you while you're walking down the street or driving? As you may know, ICE does do ICE stops. They have checkpoints throughout the country, and sometimes police work in tandem with ICE. Sometimes if a person is stopped by police, and if they find out that a person does not have legal status, they may call immigration themselves and hold the person until the immigration shows up. The important thing to know here is that by law, if a police officer stops you while you're driving or walking, they have the ability to ask you to show identification. In a vehicle, you have to show them your driver's license, and they can also ask for insurance and registration. If you refuse to show them that, they can give you a citation or ticket for each one of those. If you are in a situation where you may not have legal status, then they may call immigration. I will say that not all police call immigration, but some of them do here in the state of Texas. And with immigration, if immigration were to stop you in the street or stop you while you're driving, then it is the same as if they were knocking on your door. You want to ask to see the warrant, it needs to be signed by a judge, it needs to be by your name, or you can maintain silence. Now, that being said, you may have seen in the news in the past few weeks that Biden is changing regulations so that ICE will no longer go around detaining people. And what that means is that they're going to look to target only people with heavy criminal or immigration history. And that's because each president of the United States has the right to adjust who is targeted in immigration law. And the Biden administration has been narrowing that down. So they are only supposed to focus on those with heavy criminal history or immigration history. That being said, there's no guarantee that they wouldn't ever detain somebody else through immigration officials. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about legal options. I may not have time to go into detail about all of these, but there's definitely more information out there online and on websites. The first thing that I would say is always beware of people that are not able to help you, people that may get you into trouble by letting you think that you can apply for some kind of immigration benefit. Now, beware of what are called notarios or public notaries. In many countries, a notary is a person that went to law school and then obtained a special certificate. Here in the United States, to become a notary, all you have to do is pay about $75 or $100 and you become a notary. There's no education required. And that's because here in the United States, a notary is a person that can verify that you signed a certain document as yourself. But many times you will see that many public notaries or notario shops will advertise that they do immigration work. The problem with that is that if they do your work incorrectly, they won't be able to fix it for you, or they won't go to immigration court with you. So you definitely want to avoid that situation. There are many free resources out there, including from the government, that provide information on immigration law and options. You can always also visit an immigration attorney to see what your specific options are. Okay, and there is a phone number if you ever need to report a person that is advertising that they can help you with immigration law, but they are not attorneys. The Federal Trade Commission actually takes that very seriously. And if you are ever taken advantage of by a notario or a public notary and doing any kind of immigration work, you can actually sue them civilly as well to get them to stop doing that to other people. I definitely want to emphasize naturalization. Here in Texas, there are thousands of people that have been residents for at least 3 years or more, and they have yet to apply to become a US citizen. And there are very, very big benefits to becoming a US citizen. First of all, as a US citizen, you cannot be deported from the United States and you cannot be sent to immigration court. Second, you get the right to vote. And voting is a very important thing. If you've noticed all the political upheaval and political news that's been happening, being able to vote can really help to make your needs heard, to help the community to be able to show what their needs are. But to naturalize, it's actually pretty simple as long as you meet the requirements. You must be at least 18 years of age. You must have been a permanent of the United States for a certain period of time. Usually it's either 3 years or 5 years, which will depend on how you became a resident. You must have been living in the state or residence for at least 3 months, meaning that if you just moved, you're going to have to wait about 3 months before you can apply. You have to have lived in the United States for a certain amount of time. It's usually 3 or 5 years as well. You have to show that you have good moral character, meaning that you haven't been arrested for any heavy criminal issues. You have to be able to give the oath to the US Constitution, and you need to know some basic knowledge of US history and government. That's the civics test. Many will also have to take the naturalization test in English, but for those that have been a resident for 15 years or more, you may be eligible to take it in your own native language. And so naturalization has many, many benefits. So if you qualify, you should speak with an attorney or look up information, and you should definitely apply. Another common way is for a person that is a resident or U.S. citizen, you may be able to petition family members that are either here in the United States or in their home country. And so these are the categories of people that you can apply for depending on your status. There are certain categories where a person cannot apply. Usually that's if you are a legal permanent resident, because that's a shorter list of people you can apply for. But if you notice, if you become a US citizen, there are more people that you can petition for. And so if you believe that you can petition a person, definitely look up some resources or speak with an immigration attorney. I will say that these processes do take quite a bit of time. At this point, many of these processes take about a year or two, maybe even 3. So it's definitely something that you want to get started on so you can get that process going. There are also other types of immigration benefits that you can apply for if you are a victim of certain crimes. For example, there is an S visa for those that help the federal government with criminal investigations. There is a T visa for those that have been trafficked against their will into the United States or that are forced to work for little or no money. The U visa is very common. This one is for those that are victims of a crime in the United States that report the crime and can show that they would suffer if they're not allowed to stay in the United States. And the VAWA is for those that are married to a U.S. citizen or resident and are abused by their spouse or by a U.S. citizen or resident child or parent. Another one that has been in the news quite a bit is DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals for those that were brought to the United States as they were children. It is still possible to apply for DACA, but if you are applying for the first time because of a lawsuit here in Texas, they are on pause. So you can still apply, but you won't receive a decision anytime soon. But basically, these are the requirements here. You can also find them online. If you meet all of them, there's plenty of free resources out there and attorneys that will do this service for free, including ourselves, if we have, as long as we have capacity to take it on. But if you believe you qualify for DACA, make sure that you do the proper research before you apply. Another area that I wanted to touch are business visas. Many times we will hear from a person that says, hey, I've been working for this company for 5, 10, 15 years. My boss really likes how I work. They would like to petition for me so that I can become a resident. There are many different kinds of business visas. Now, they don't all lead to resident. The usual common issue that I see is that if a person came to the United States without documentation, or if they came in with documentation, but their status expired, then your company probably will not be able to petition you. And the way I usually find out is that if you have been in the United States for more than 6 months without legal status, that usually means that a company cannot petition for you and seek residency. If you do believe you may qualify, you should definitely speak with an immigration attorney that specializes in business visas. But in general, if you have been in the United States for more than 6 months without legal status, almost always you won't qualify for a business visa. You may still qualify for other options, but as far as a business visa for a company to petition you, that may not be an option. And lastly, to finish off, I just want to mention that, even with any president of the United States, we always have immigration court and people that are in removal proceedings. If you are in a removal proceedings, meaning you have a hearing in front of an immigration judge, make sure you speak to an attorney. There are many children that come to the United States without their parents that are put into immigration proceedings. Many of the people that seek asylum at the border and allowed to come into the United States are also in immigration proceedings, but may sometimes misunderstand that being allowed into the United States means that they don't have an immigration court hearing. If in doubt, speak with an attorney. It is very important that you understand your legal options. If you're not in immigration court, but you think you may apply for immigration benefits, what I would say there is that it's very important that you understand that applying for any immigration benefit, if you don't qualify, you may always be sent to immigration court. So before you apply for any immigration benefit, make sure you speak to an immigration attorney so you can understand the benefits, costs, and risks of applying for any kind of immigration benefit. I listed only 2 resources here, ourselves and also USCIS, which provides all immigration forms for free. USCIS is part of the government, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. They're the ones that make all the decisions on the immigration benefit applications for anybody that applies. And they provide instructions and the forms for free. So you should never have to pay for any of that. And I thank you for your time. I think we've run out of time for questions if there are any.